Did you know that beneath the Sphinx paws lurks a secret tunnel that leads straight to the greatest mystery in human history? Although the world-famous hybrid creature has graced the Giza Plateau for thousands of years, it is still accompanied by enormous question marks and exciting legends. But what would you say if I told you that the massive statue is not alone? That hidden in the hot desert sands of Giza is another Sphinx, every bit the equal of its above-ground counterpart. Get ready to dive into the mysterious world of the ancient Egyptians together with us. The ancient Egyptians were by no means exclusive to the Sphinx. This means that other peoples of antiquity, such as the Phoenicians, the Assyrians, and of course the ancient Greeks, also knew such mixed creatures. And yet one thing seems undisputed. In terms of magnificence and size, no other creature comes close to the colossal Sphinx of Giza. Or does it? Well, maybe it does. On one hand, experts believe that most of the Egyptian desert is still unexplored. Against this background, no researcher can say what overwhelming structures lie buried in the endless seas of sand. But that's not all. Experts like Jerry Cannon and Malcolm Huttons are rock-solidly convinced that the Egyptians once created a second Great Sphinx, which was the counterpart to the one we know, because strictly speaking, the statue actually breaks the ancient Egyptian pattern. As a rule, sphinxes were always represented in pairs, so this basic assumption would have to mean that another, perhaps destroyed sphinx hides on the Giza Plateau. In detail, the second one would be the opposite of the first sphinx. Together, the creatures would represent the transformation of the sun into the moon. And indeed, a few months ago, the experts were to track down a completely unknown sphinx in Egypt. It was not the monumental counterpart, but still an artifact that left archaeologists with raised eyebrows. The Sphinx is smiling. Thus, the grinning sculpture together with the remains of a shrine could be found during excavations in Kina on the east bank of the Nile. Made of limestone, the statue has royal features and a gentle smile. Moreover, its head was adorned by a nemes, that is, a traditional headscarf worn by the pharaohs. And yet, very likely, the artifact does not show us an Egyptian ruler, but the Roman Emperor Claudius, who ruled from 41 to 54 AD. This was also indicated by the Roman stele with hieroglyphic and Demotic writings, which was recovered from under the smiling Sphinx. The Hall of Records. If exciting legends are followed, the key to ultimate knowledge lies dormant beneath the Giza Plateau. The entrance to this lost hoard of knowledge is to lie under stone plates before the paws of the Sphinx and lead to the legendary Hall of the Records. There, in turn, would be stored the tangible evidence of the existence of a vanished, long-forgotten advanced civilization. Who was this advanced civilization? Well, nobody really knows, but maybe it was directly connected to Plato's Atlantis myth. But even though there is no official evidence of such a site under the Sphinx, some wonder if there might not ultimately be something to this story. One way to unravel this mystery would be, of course, to inspect the area in question and look for traces. And that leads us to the next point of today's video. Hidden cavities. With the rumor of the Hall of Records in mind, Joe Yehoda and Joseph Skor conducted some seismological surveys around the Sphinx in 1997. While previous excavations and drilling had not hit the bullseye, this series of research painted a somewhat different picture. The data collected actually indicated that unknown chambers lie beneath the structure. What's more, some cavities appeared to have 90-degree angles, casting serious doubt on a natural background. Yehoda and Skor asked the Egyptian Antiquities Authority for permission to uncover the mysterious area, but the request was denied, officially to protect the ancient statue from damage. Missing information. Okay, admittedly, the story about the Hall of Records may sound a bit too wacky to some. However, it's not even necessary to delve into the nebulous world of alternative historiography to realize that the Sphinx still embodies a gigantic mystery. Thus, even the conservative researchers cannot say when the Sphinx was built and why. Basically, the period of origin is narrowed down to the years 2570 to 2494 before Christ. Consequently, It was probably the pharaoh Khafre who initiated the construction of the mixed being. Regarding its function, most experts assume that the statue served as a guardian of the Giza Plateau. And even if all these seem quite plausible, they have a big catch. They simply cannot be proven from an archaeological point of view. Because although the structure undoubtedly had an outstanding importance, there is nowhere an inscription that explains at what time the Sphinx was built and what original purpose it served. The only source researchers can refer to is a stone tablet located between the Sphinx's paws called the Dream Stele. And although the artifact does not reveal who built the statue, it does at least indicate who had Dream Stele erected: Pharaoh Thutmose IV. Carved from one stone. The Cheops Pyramid is made up of about 2.65 million stone blocks. But how many stones did the pharaoh's empire actually need to create the Sphinx? Well, a single one. With a length of more than 73 and a height of a good 20 meters, we could rightly say that the ancient Egyptians once again demonstrated their extraordinary skills here. Well, if you believe that it was really the ancient Egyptians who built the Sphinx. Controversial persons such as Graham Hancock put to this a somewhat different point of view. The true age. A short research shows the era of ancient Egypt began around the year 3000 BC. The problem? At this time, the Sphinx was already 9,000 years old. At least this is what the people claim who have identified some conspicuous traces around the structure, which are supposed to testify the true, much higher age of the statue. In detail, it is a series of water erosions, which do not appear in any other structure in Giza and are supposed to be the result of regular heavy rains. However, Egypt last experienced such a period of rainfall some 7,000 to 12,000 years ago. Some other studies, which are admittedly highly speculative, even date the origin of the Sphinx back several 100,000 years. The first time. In one line of the mentioned Dream Stele it says, "I am here since the first time." That era, also known as the mythical time of the beginning, is called Zep Tepi. According to ancient Egyptian sources, this was a time when the gods still dwelled on Earth and lived side by side with humans. Of course, most historians insist that Zep Tepi describes a purely fictional myth. Other, more imaginative minds, however, believe that the legend has a kernel of truth. However, the supposed gods were not supernatural creatures, but extraterrestrial intelligences that regularly visited the ancient inhabitants. They also revealed to the people a higher knowledge and advanced technologies, which made the erection of monumental buildings and the civilizational upswing possible in the first place. The buried Sphinx. Some information about the Sphinx is almost common knowledge. That the Sphinx lost its nose over time, probably everyone has heard. But did you know that the statue once also wore a chin beard? The stone stubble was uncovered in 1888 by Giovanni Battista Cavaglia. And speaking of exposed, the Sphinx spent most of its life so far in the desert sand. Even when Napoleon arrived in Egypt in 1798, he only got to see the human skull of the hybrid creature. While it is thanks to the sandy bed that the statue has remained so well preserved to this day, it was due to the persistence of Emile Barres that the Sphinx finally made it back to daylight. The promise of the Sphinx. That it can be worthwhile to free the Sphinx from the sand, Thutmose IV was allowed to experience joyfully at the own body, so it says at least the old Egyptian folklore. Even before Thutmose rose to the ruler of his country, he is said to have laid down to sleep under the head of the statue. So while he slept under the monument buried in the sand, he dreamed that the Sphinx spoke to him. In detail, Thutmose received instructions to completely uncover the statue. In return, however, his efforts would be richly rewarded, and the Sphinx would make him pharaoh. There, where legend merges with reality, stood in the end a statue that kept its word. Thutmose IV reigned from about 1397 to 1388 BC. The Anubis Sphinx. No matter how many riddles may accompany the Sphinx, one thing is beyond question. We are dealing with a creature that has a body of a reclining lion and the head of a human being. But was it always like that? Some alternative researchers speculate that today's Sphinx has nothing at all to do with its original appearance. Some theories are based on the assumption that the statue was once also adorned by the matching skull of a lion, representing the zodiac sign of Leo. However, there is no evidence that the big cats had such a status in ancient Egyptian history. And also, the lying position does not necessarily correspond to the posture typical for a lion. Considering the extraordinary effort required to erect the statue, one might think that the Egyptians placed a high value on accurate symbolism. And this is where the god of the dead, Anubis, comes into play. Usually depicted with a dog or jackal's head, some individuals believe that this was the true template of the Sphinx. So could it be that the appearance of the Sphinx was changed afterwards? And with that, thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe to stay updated. We look forward to your comments.